I think music has a unique power to put you in the minds of characters and still have you considering the songs as layers and metatextual interpretation to who they are. So I think this is actually a good idea to release this as a musical. But then there's some points where it's just like, this is ridiculous and it only happens in movie land. But there's enough of a grounding of reality that you can hook into the movie and still not feel like I'm watching these teen drama for an hour and a half and I just want to go.
Hi, I'm Teresa. Welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we'll be discussing the new movie, Mean Girls. Again, the musical this time.
Rebecca, let's get started.
Katie Heron is out of the loop when it comes to being a teenager, having been homeschooled by her mother in Africa before coming back to the U.S. She soon discovers that without a clique to belong to, high school will be an uphill struggle. With competing groups of students volleying for Katie's membership, including the most popular group in school, the Plastics, Katie has to ask herself, did she trade one jungle for another?
Rebecca, Mean Girls. Ask me how much I know about Mean Girls.
I'm almost scared to, but how much do you know?
I hear there's a movie. It's called Mean Girls. It's out. I think it's a musical.
We'll get into that.
Right. Lindsay Lohan, a movie you saw when you were younger, and that's about where my knowledge base started.
I'm surprised this movie completely escaped your frame of reference, considering I grew up when the original movie came out and you had the book that inspired the original movie.
Let's talk about the book, actually. I know we're here to talk about Mean Girls, and I have since learned many, many things, so I'm pretty good. I think I'm up to it. But I didn't realize it was based on the book, the Queen Bees and the Wannabes book. I remember reading that. I remember a friend of ours said, this is a great book to read. And it was a great book.
It's fantastic for my social studies once I yoinked it from your bookshelf.
Yeah, right. But it's funny because there is a lot of similarities. And of course, right, we're doing this review, so I have read more. I understand it more. But you're right, the original just right over my head.
I grew up when the original came out. It was everywhere. Lindsay Lohan just suddenly blew up from Disney gal to bona fide teen star.
It's a painful movie, though, to watch.
If you need to talk to me about anything, boy troubles, blackheads, or alcohol poisoning, I have been through it all.
Meaning, I think most people that have had a high school experience, at least parts of this, they can relate to.
We have a new student.
What's up, Katie?
Are you trying to make the rest of us feel dumb?
I'm not trying to, it's just happening.
Especially a very standard American high school experience. Some things just don't change.
Why is he by our table?
I can hear you, by the way.
Can you hear me now?
Isn't that amazing, too? Because we're in 2024. The movie was released. Original movie came out. Do you recall when? What year?
2004. It was like the height of the Juicy Tracksuit Mania.
Oh, okay.
You had
that
all the pop music. Paris Hilton was everywhere and nowhere at once.
Yeah, right. And all of a sudden, it's all coming back. Now I'm like, oh, yeah, that whole period of, right. But 20 years later, and it still resonates. And obviously, I've been out of high school for more than 20 years. Can't imagine. I know, hard to imagine. But there is that part of it where, Katie comes on the scene, new experience. And you feel for her. And honestly, I wasn't sure who would be friends with her. I thought it was kind of interesting that the plastic groups, right, the girls, gravitated toward her. I just don't see that happening typically.
I think the movie in and of itself is interesting because you see Katie take on this outsider role and you see everybody immediately zone in towards her. And it's not like it's forced. It's a genuine curiosity with all the versions of this story.
That's a good way to put it, too, versus they weren't bringing her in to then, toss her aside or make fun of her. Maybe originally a little bit, just kind of ooh. But to see her as a curiosity of sorts, meaning she's new, she's kind of exotic, right? She's from Africa. There's this whole thing. I remember they were asking, where'd you come from? And she's like, I was homeschooled in Africa with my mom. And so I do think that there was that part that was interesting. The acting, I thought, was actually really good. It was very believable to me.
The acting was good in this version. To me, the singing is very hit or miss. The soundtrack just came out today. For context, we're taping this on Friday. in some of the people singing, it's very clear who's had the experience and the time in singing versus someone who hasn't.
What would you say the big difference is?
I think the big difference when you're listening to the soundtrack is the emotion that's packed into the songs.
Oh,
for me.
interesting. Okay.
I was not a huge fan of the Broadway version. When I was in the teen movie musical phase of my life, the one that I gravitated towards more was Heathers. But I know a lot of people like this version, so I went back after we saw the screening of the movie, and purposely not before, to listen to the sound. And it sounds very Broadway, but still with some of that alt edge that was really prevalent in the mid-aughts.
Okay.
This one feels like a movie musical. There's certain touches in the soundtrack that feels more cinematic. So I can like it a little bit more from that perspective.
And that's a good point, though, because if you can compare the two, it's interesting because the original one was not a musical. It was just a movie.
It was just a movie, then they made a musical, and now they've made a musical movie version. And that's
I'm
different
laughing.
too.
What's next?
And we're going to completely ignore the sequel.
Oh, that's right. There's a 2, and you were saying 2.
Oh, no. The only thing I can say about the sequel is Tim Meadows definitely has job security.
To me, it was a complete movie, and I know we've been joking about the epilogues and things. No epilogue, but to me, it felt it was a beginning, a middle, and end. There was definitely a timeless quality that we've talked about. It is interesting to go, wow, 20 years later, people still want to hear this and see this. And the part that kind of stood out for me, so Jenna Fisher, most people know her from The Office, was Katie's mom. And it was funny, she actually looked a lot like her, which kind of cracked me up. I'm like, it looks like she could be her mom. But I appreciated that part of it, which is when moms are helping raise their kids, and in this situation, right, most of the cast are the girls and the daughters, how that looks. And at one point, Jenna Fisher, her mom said, "Oh, I just don't know how to help you.
They're learning things now that I don't know how to teach."
And I thought, I think that's a universal thought of parents. And to me, that doesn't go away, that timeless theme, if you will. And so that part of it helped me understand, okay, this is why this movie is happening. And I think there will always be girls or guys that feel like they're on the inside and some that feel like they're on the outside.
I think that's one of the things that makes this story so endearing is there's always going to be that desire to fit in. There's always going to be that lack of want to say, screw you, I don't want to fit in. There's definitely many different angles that this story takes that you can find something to enjoy in. That being said, I just didn't like this adaptation. I definitely liked it more than the Broadway musical.
Okay.
And I recognize that a lot of the songs from the Broadway musical were kind of scrapped. In fact, they had a brand new song that was co-written by Renee Rapp along with the original writers for the musical. So I did appreciate some of the new touches that they put in. I just somehow I felt like there was something missing in the film. And I think I don't think it was the lack of passion. Everybody who came back because they believed in the story.
Correct. And my understanding is Tina Fey helped modify it, and she was one of the original writers.
And she did so for the original musical as well.
Correct. So she's passionate, and she obviously made a cameo. Lindsay Lohan had made a slight cameo in the movie. And I always appreciate that because they liked it. They wanted to bring it forward.
I just felt like some characters were very uneven in points. I wanted to like Katie more. I wanted to empathize and follow her journey more. Instead, I found myself more passionately reaching for the quote side characters and maybe one main character, but that's about it.
Now, which one is that? Do you remember?
I definitely like Renee Rapp's performance of Regina, but I like Undi's performance of the new Janice.
Okay, no, that's fair. And I think it's good that we're talking about because, as you said, I have a longer, meaning you, I have a longer history. I have different comparison points. And I came in blind, understandably. I don't know if I'm their target audience. Maybe if I saw it originally or I have the nostalgia factor with you, maybe they would say, oh, yeah, we want you to watch it. But for me, just as a standalone movie or, musical movie, I wasn't overly enamored with it. It just it did what it needed to do. There's nothing in there where it stands out to me where I'd say, oh, I couldn't wait to watch this again, or oh my goodness, I have all these fond memories. I honestly, the book that it was based on, I enjoyed the book a great deal. I understand and I appreciate that some girls or some kids in school go through this. The supporting actors and actresses, the girl who played Janice, she was really phenomenal. To me, she stood out above, any of the plastic girls, if you will. And Regine, obviously she's mean and she's standing out, but the supporting girls, they felt very flat. I know at one point the girl who, was Karen, the character Karen, she was, really dingy and kind of like a little, bimbo kind of a girl. And I remember asking, I go, wow, in the original, was she playing that stupid?
Look at this thing. I can't even see it. Like a face breast.
And I had to explain to you, yes, and it was worse than the original.
Oh, and to me, I get it, but it just, I think part of it is the movie felt very exaggerated.
I think that's the whole point.
Is it the point? Okay.
I think that's the whole point is there's touch points in the original where that feels real. That feels like something that you could have heard happen to a friend, of a distant cousin.
Sure.
But then there's some points where it's just like, this is ridiculous and it only happens in movie land. But there's enough of a grounding of reality that you can hook into the movie and still not feel like I'm watching these teen drama for an hour and a half and I just want to go.
I think what would have helped me is with the exaggeration part, understanding that high school feels exaggerated and dramatic, right? When people go, oh, that's so high school, that's what they're talking about generally. I can respect that and understand that. However, it just became almost like a character of a movie.
I think that's why it helps that this adaptation wasn't a straight remake, that it was a musical, that it gave room for this theatricality.
That's a good point. Do we have any questions from the box?
Being that this was a musical, what song really grasped you and jumped out at you?
I think the song that really takes the core strengths of the movie and translates them into something tangible is Someone Gets Hurt. I love how it takes this character whose viewpoint you might not necessarily emotionally want to grasp, but it forces you to reckon with the fact that this character is a real character with feelings and motivations, but it also sets the stage for more exaggerated actions in the story that drive it forward.
I'll be honest, a lot of the music I would have to look to determine the names of, still pretty new, but toward the end, I'd Rather Be Me.
Yes.
With Janice singing that, it was, she's good in the guitar. Her voice and the lyrics were good. I appreciated that. And to me, that helped enrich the story. So I would say that would be one that jumped out at me. Some of the other ones feel a little bit more background to me.
I can understand that.
Do we have any other questions from the box?
The Color Purple had its original film, then it had its musical, and then its adaptation of a musical film. This movie did the same thing. We got the film, we got the musical, and now we got the adaptation. You really liked The Color Purple's adaptation. Do you think this one was as successful as The Color Purple was?
There's one scene that they put in this movie that was noticeably removed from the original movie. I saw the deleted scene a few years ago, and it really gave me a different perspective, and I wish that they had put it in the original Mean Girls movie. They put it in this movie, which really communicated to me the efficacy of what these filmmakers were trying to do, which was bring everything together. There are going to be songs in here that you'll want to see from the musical. They aren't in the movie. I think this did what it set out to do. It's not perfect, but it is a good Frankenstitch of all these different encounters with the franchise.
The Color Purple, it's an interesting comparison because it was all those different pieces that the box was talking about. It also had the off-Broadway. So it was Frankenstitched together, as you were saying, which it's a great word. But to me, The Color Purple had so much more heart, and I have to go, well, it's a different topic, meaning high school can feel that intense as The Color Purple. But to compare the two in that arena, that's a little bit tricky. But none of the music in this movie stands out other than the one song that I had talked about. And I don't know. We both gave The Color Purple 5 moth rating. To me, that's the top of the game. And this one just doesn't fall near that to me.
I agree with you. I've encountered the franchise in almost every iteration that it existed at some point. And I've also seen the cultural response to every iteration of the franchise up until this point. So it's really strange for me to say, yes, this is on the same level, but in its media of choice and its audience, it is that big. So it's really interesting to see that.
Do we have any other questions from the box?
When we reviewed The Color Purple, we asked the question, did this need to be released? Let's ask the same question here. Did this one need to be released when we have the previous properties?
I think the musical adds different dimensions to characters that you already know. I think music has a unique power to put you in the minds of characters and still have you considering the songs as layers and metatextual interpretation to who they are. So I think this is actually a good idea to release this as a musical.
I obviously can't speak to the previous ones. However, I did appreciate the music because, as you said, it helps further the story, tell the story in a deeper way. And the choreography, I thought, was very seamless. I mean, there were scenes where you're like, oh, she's going to bump into him. Oh, she's going to hit him. Oh, and no chaos ensued. It was nice to look at. It was interesting. It kept it moving. And to me, because it's a pretty standard story, right? Girl moves, gets to make friends, figures out who she truly is, blah, 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 chain, blah, you know. It's pretty straightforward. So to me, it added variety and interest to the movie that was reasonably predictable and just kind of, oh, okay, yeah, it's happening.
As the box, I'm going to say as a guy, I wasn't excited to see this movie. My compliment to the movie would be, I think the musical made it much more interesting than if it wouldn't have had the musical piece. I think the depth it gave it and helping the movie move along and not fill into boring spots or slow spots was a positive and probably was the best experience I could have seeing this movie.
Did you ever watch the original with me?
No.
Okay. I'm just trying to remember because we watched like Legally Blonde and stuff growing up.
Right.
The box likes Legally Blonde. 1, 2, and 3.
3's a maybe still, remember?
Well, I'm kidding, but you know. The box is like, what? There's a 3. I didn't know. All right. Done picking on the box for now. 1 to 5. I don't know if they're mean moths or they're friendly moths, but they're spinning. So
I'm going to be a little mean today.
Uh-oh. It's a mean moth rating. 1 to 5. What do you think?
2 and a wing.
Oof. Number 1 reason.
This movie did not have enough heft. There were moments of heft, but it wasn't enough to carry the whole movie. I did listen to both soundtracks this morning, and I want to use the song I See Stars as a comparison point. In the movie, I See Stars is a cute, fluffy little ballad that makes you kind of realize the moral of the story. In the musical, it's more oomph. Katie really grapples with her emotions, and then you really see kind of this dawn of realization. It doesn't feel as fluffy. In fact, you feel the heaviness through Katie's journey.
All right, 5. Oof. I know.
I'm not mad.
I know. I'm laughing. I think people think we enjoy like sending moths away, but we don't always. I would say it's a 2 and a wing for me too, honestly.
I thought you were going to give it a little higher, so I'm kind of surprised a little bit.
Wow. No, I was actually debating lower. But I'm like, oof, I know. That's why I wanted to really kind of think about it, because I have an idea when I come in, but I also think and, go through it again. And I'm always open to increasing or decreasing my moth rating. I think it's average. It wasn't bad. The acting was good. The story for what it was what it was. But it didn't, I'm not going to walk away singing the songs like I did with Color Purple. I'm not going to be thinking about the acting later. I'm not going to go home and watch it again. I'm not saying, oh, run out and see it. Although I recognize there is an audience for this movie, and I respect that. However, I can't say it's a universal audience, although it's a universal theme.
That's kind of a tough position to be in because it is a universal theme. So you think it could appeal to a wider audience. And what you're saying is you don't see it appealing to that wide of an audience. You only see it almost as fan service. Is that what I hear you saying?
Some fan service. However, I think that there are girls and guys too, of course, but this is centered more around the girls in this specific movie. I would say perhaps the high school crowd would find this universal. In our showing, we saw an early preview screening. There were younger people in there. I would love to have our cinema community comment below if they're part of this fan group. And maybe like you're saying, which Mean Girls iteration did they like the best?
I'd be curious to see that too, purely because there seems to be a bit of a divide in the fandoms from what I've seen over the years.
Okay. For me to give it a higher Moth rating, I would say I need to see this more universal, meaning not appeal to one small segment. And if for some reason, if it appeals to one small segment, it needs to be hitting every box, no pun intended, no offense box, excellently in every piece. And I just felt like there were high points, and you said high points and low points, and it didn't do that. We were laughing that it's kind of petty and pink, and there is a part of that, right? The plastics, that's kind of their thing. But it just wasn't overly memorable. And honestly, I was surprised that after 20 years, it came back again. But I agree, the musical was the best format, but it didn't feel like this is so above average compared to The Color Purple. It just didn't do it for me. Thanks for joining us. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Watch the notifications for a review of the new movie, Queen Rock Montreal, in IMAX. Then come back to the channel this weekend for our weekly show, Movies and More, where we will have more movie reviews, the latest Hollywood news, and commentary with snark, meant to amuse.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and share our channel.
If you enjoyed this movie review, you might click the link to check our review of American Fiction, or click the other link to watch last week's show where we reviewed Migration.
Remember, cinema community movies are better together. Thanks for watching. See you in the next review.